Go ahead, make my day. The iconic words first uttered by Clint Eastwood in those great movies of the 70s. I love this guy. That's who I wanted to be. When I first became a police officer, I thought that's what it was about. I wanted to get into gunfights. I wanted to drive really fast cars all over the place. I wanted to rescue the really pretty girl. You know what I really wanted to do? Was make a difference. I wanted to save society from itself, because after all, we're the police, we've got all the answers. But to make a difference, that's what I really wanted to do. As I got into policing, I really started to see that the world was evolving, and what we did in our job was nothing like Dirty Harry did. But we had a good, honorable job. Our profession, I think, is one of the best that you can do to give something back to our society. But as time went on, I started seeing some cracks in what I thought we should be doing. I started getting a little bit frustrated in my career because what I thought should be happening wasn't. Over the course of about a year, I can remember one time, I arrested a grandpa, his son, and 2 of his sons. 3 generations of a family. I thought to myself, what are we doing here? We're looking at this big hamster wheel just moving around and around and around. My dad's bricklayer. If you go to my hometown and you look around, you can see his work all over the place. He's left a legacy. Long after he's gone, people will be able to see something beautiful. He brought some beauty into the world. He made a difference. He made a change. I thought, I need to do something. We need to leave a legacy for ourselves, for our children. So I had an opportunity a few years ago to really look at what policing was all about and kind of go back into our history to figure out where we need to go into the future. And I found out some really interesting things. Ran across this guy, Sir Robert Peel. Sir Robert Peel was the first police commissioner of the London Metropolitan Police Department. He was a very interesting guy. He actually later on became the Prime Minister of Great Britain. So there's some work, I have a shot at another job after this, I guess. Peel inherited a police department in London that was not dissimilar to what we see today. He had a huge growing population, lots of immigration. People that lived in that community didn't look like, sound like, or talk like the people that had lived there for generations before him. He inherited a community that had gang violence, had gun violence. They had organized crime. They had people that were in prostitution, drugs, you name it. Very similar to what we had today. And Peel thought to himself, you know what? We can't arrest ourselves out of the problem. We need a different solution. There's just not enough police officers to go around. So what he brought in was these guys. He hired the best and the brightest he could possibly get his hands on. What he wanted was to have a police department that was responsive to the people that they served, to really think about what it is our society wanted from us and where we needed to go, to really care. So what he did is when he hired these folks, they went into the community and they quickly regained the trust of the people that they served. And the people actually supported the police to the extent that they took on his nickname. These guys are named the Bobbies after Robert Peel. And we have that even today, that they're a very respected police service because they care and they're inside their communities. That model served us in policing over the years very, very well. But by the time we hit the 1960s, things have changed. We've gone to this model of policing that was all about reacting to what we saw. We weren't in the community any longer. We're in police cars, the windows rolled up, answering calls for service after something bad had happened. Somebody already had become a victim. And we really didn't care why. We didn't care why somebody committed the crime. We just knew that we had to put somebody in jail. And that was the model for many, many years. By the time we got to the 1980s, things had started to change again. Some police leaders of the day thought, you know what, we need to become far more reactive to the people that we serve. They're paying our wages, we live in these communities, and we're just not seeing changes that we really need to see. And so we even changed the name of our police departments. We went away from police departments or police forces to police services. And that was a fundamental shift as we started to see us move into where we needed to go. Police services have a different focus now than police departments or police forces ever did. What we wanted to do was we didn't want to become soft on crime. Just driving around talking to people wasn't solving crimes. But being smart on crime was a big thing that we needed to do. We needed to use the intelligence that we had today, the people in our community, so that everybody was doing what they needed to do to make our society, our community a better place. Let me give you a quick example. This is an early example of something that we tried, and we had some pretty good success with it. A few years ago, we had a number of robberies in our community that primarily dealt with pharmacies. And these pharmacies were getting hit 2 to 3 times a day, and the violence level of the robbers were increasing more and more. So we started to identify some of these guys. This is a fellow that works for us, and actually he put together these slides, and he thought he did a pretty decent job. So the first thing we did is we put our resources to this, what we usually do. We put our investigators out there, and we made a number of arrests. But the robberies continued to happen. We just weren't getting ahead of what was happening. So we decided to go out to the community, and we started talking to the people that we worked with, the people that were affected by these robberies, primarily the pharmacies and the medical community. And we learned 2 important things. One, that the perpetrators, what they were after were the drugs, not the money in the pharmacies. They're going after open tills of money and just going after the drugs. So we had to figure out a way to dry up the drugs. And another way is to stop the amount of prescriptions that were available to people in the community. And so the medical community took it upon themselves to come up with a plan, so that now there's a very limited number of drugs available in the pharmacies, so that it doesn't make it worthwhile for somebody to go in and try to steal them at gunpoint. The other is there's not as many scripts or number of pills being issued to people, and they have to come back more regularly. So our robbery rates went from 2 to 3 a day to 0. And we thought, wow, that's awesome. We were doing high fives, running around, thinking, yep, you know what? We solved this. We're rock stars. Then I got a call from a friend of mine at a neighboring police department. He says, Frank, what the hell are you guys doing? I said, why? What's going on? He says his robbery rates just went through the roof, and they're all Sudbury bandits. So I thought, wow, we solved our crime rate, but we displaced the issue into his community. We really didn't solve anything. So we had to go back to the drawing board. And we started talking to the people again that are affected and going into the community. And you know what we figured out? The addicts had nowhere to go. There's nothing in our community. The resources were very limited in what they can get help for. And so we worked very tirelessly, not the police, but the community itself, is to figure out ways in which to increase the level of help that we could get these people. And we've been working at that for a number of years. Our robbery rate last year, when we typically get these types of occurrences, was 0. And so we had some very limited success, but we're quite happy with the way that it worked. And there he is, working for us now. So he's a good guy. So what did we learn from this? Typically, in our society, all the various agencies that work in society are very siloed in our approach. Everybody does a fantastic job at their own little sandbox, their own backyard. We have funding models that we care about policing, and the medical field cares about the medical, and it goes on and on and on. But we really don't play very well in each other's sandboxes. So what we need to do is have a community approach. It's not a policing model, it's a community model, and where we all have the community's best interest, whatever that might be. If it's a medical issue, a law enforcement issue, a social issue, that we all do our part. We're all rowing in the right direction. I can remember calling my dad up and saying, Dad, you know what? This is an awesome model. We need to do something with this. I think this is really something that's exciting for us. And anybody that knows my dad knows that the day I became a police officer was the proudest day of his life. If there's anyone I've ever met that loved the police and wanted the police to succeed and thought we had our hearts in the right place, it was my father. But when I told him what we were doing, you know what he said? He said, Frank, it's about time. I thought, what do you mean? He says, you're just so unresponsive to us as a community and what our community needs are. It's about time you started doing something like that. I thought, if my dad thought that, what does the average person think that doesn't know who we are and doesn't know that our hearts are in the right place? So with that challenge, I thought we needed to move forward, and fast. So one of the first examples I can give you of where we really tried to put this into place was as it relates to prostitution. That was an issue back in Peel's day. It's an issue in our day. The typical police response when we get this is we go out, we do a sweep, we arrest the women, we bring them to the station, they're incarcerated, the next morning they go before the courts, and they're released on a monetary fine, and they go back on the streets within 24 hours. Hamster wheel, right? Just going around and around and around. But nothing's solved. All we've done is taken money out of their pocket, money that they've actually needed to live on, to subside. So what do we need to do? We brought all the various community partners together, various people, anyone we could think of that worked with people that were disenfranchised within our community. And they brought people to the table as well. And so we had as many people as we possibly could think of that cared about their wellness, their safety. And we came together with a plan, and I thought a pretty decent plan. So the first thing that we did is we went out as the police, and we did our roundup, and we scooped up as many as we could find and brought them to the station like we typically do. But instead of meeting bars, they were met by a number of social agencies that actually talked to them, that actually cared about their health, their safety. We gave them pamphlets on how to keep themselves safe. The social workers talked to them about changing their lives and figuring out what it was in their lives that needed help. You know what we learned? One of the first things? Very few of them had any form of identification. Even if they wanted to get a job, they couldn't. They had no social insurance card. They couldn't file taxes and get a GST rebate like everyone else is entitled to do. They couldn't get proper medical care because they didn't have a health card. They didn't, for all intent purposes, exist in our society. I thought that was shocking in the 21st century. So we helped them get identification and made them whole within our community. Then what we want to do, let's try to get them jobs. Meaningful jobs that they could be proud of, that they could sustain their families on. So that's what we did. We started working with them to be able to get those jobs. But to be able to get the jobs, they needed education or training. So another group of social agencies came together to work with them to get them the training and the jobs that they needed to succeed. A lot of them had children. And so we provided child support so they could go and they knew that their kids were safe wherever they might be while they're out either working or getting retrained. Last year, we took 7 women off the streets that changed their lives and are no longer working as prostitutes. 7 might not seem like a huge number, but to me, those are 7 lives that we've changed. 7 families where we've broke the cycle. Remember I was talking to you before about the grandfather, the son, and his 2 sons? If we can break that cycle, those children now have an opportunity to succeed. They can see something else. They can see something in their lives, something they can work on bigger than themselves, and be able to get those jobs and be successful and give something back to our society. It's all about community mobilization. And again, this isn't a policing plan. This is a community plan where we're all together. I truly believe communities, this whole mobilization piece is about a wheel. And we all do our part. It's about community wellness, community health, community safety, whatever it might be. And we all play a cog in that wheel. These people got that. The fellow sitting in the front there, number 14, that's Joey McDonald. He was one of our police officers that died in the line of duty a few years ago. And he was one of the first pioneers of our police service that was out there doing what it needed to be done and taking all these people, these kids and the adults that had nothing to do with policing and making their part of the world a little bit better. Joey got it. It's about a shared commitment. All of us working together for the shared commitment of community safety, health. If we want to get away from Clint Eastwood's model of, go ahead, punk, make my day, and move towards Sir Robert Peel's model of community service, mobilization, or my dad's, then I think what we need to do is link arms and have that community focus, all of us together, and move together as one. Thanks very much.